in with the chat right now. We got
different. So there's a lot of sound, there's a lot of noise.
Why is everybody in slow motion?
Without further ado, let's bring on Chris. Further ado. But without further ado, let's bring on Lori. Howdy, folks. Mike, you don't look like H.
If I would have known I was going to be doing this, I wouldn't have shaved so prematurely before today.
Yeah, and you would have probably worn a BudTrainer shirt too.
Or maybe some overalls like down below here.
Yeah, or the apron that H has.
Yeah.
Guys, I know you're not going to be disappointed anyways because we have Mike here in his place. But H, unfortunately, couldn't make today. He had just something that, he couldn't make it. We'll keep it at that. He will be back next month. Don't worry. And we have a great guest coming on later today, which we've had on before. Cool conversation last time. But we're going to be a bit more focused on something you can implement into your own gardening experience, which is making your own genetics, crossing your own seeds and having some fun with that. I know Mike's super excited. Mike, how's your week going before we get into all those topics?
My back, man. Everyone last live we did Friday. I was oh no, did we do a live last Friday? Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
Right before the cut down. So I did the cut down on the weekend. My wife helped me a lot with it. Shout out to Sarah. She always helping me. But my back, man, harvesting's always the worst time of the week for me because I'm finally today starting to loosen up. So what are you gonna do? You gotta harvest your plants, right? So
hey man, it's like that give and take, right? You're making your own medicine, but sometimes you need your own medicine because of making your own medicine. So there you go. So guys, welcome to the second monthly Growin Buds. We used to do this every Friday and thought, hey, why don't we do a bit of a more organized show once a month? We're going to be doing a giveaway at the end for a big bud bundle that's going to come with our entire product line, your choice of pot size, your choice of color, bud clips, bud cups, and bud huggers. We actually have the black ones coming in pretty soon. So our whole line will be available in both yellow and black. Very exciting. And stick around to win that. We'll give you instructions on how to win that giveaway a little bit later on. But one of the keys is going to be on YouTube, Facebook, or X. Those watching from Instagram won't be able to win that just because of the capabilities of StreamYard here. Super cool platform, but that's just one of the limitations of it. Like I said, we're going to have a guest on in just a little bit, Scott Gollum. He has a wealth of experience as far as commercial cannabis production, breeding, and all that stuff. And I was sharing the last episode we had on our socials this week because definitely an episode you'll want to go check out again or check out for the first time if you weren't around back when we did that. Last week, Mike was on. You harvested your plants, kicked my butt. I will not lie, even though you did have more plants. And anyways, we won't get into excuses. As a Leaf fan, that's where I usually go to right away is the excuses. But I actually harvested my bud cup grow this week, so I have a little update video on that. I started 3 new seeds as well. Those are going to be going into 3-gallon pots. But Mike, you're going to run another bud cup run?
Yeah, man, I severely was impressed with severely, that's a bad word, but I was super excited how much I ended up getting off. I ended up getting off just under what I got with either one plant scrogged out or those 12 3-gallon pots that was stupid, like, and unmanageable. So I was very close, man. I was super stoked with it. So it uses less nutrients because it's 16 ounces of cocoa and 60% of that is like a couple mils of runoff, not very much, right? So compared to the 3 gallons, which was like a ridiculous amount of runoff. So cheaper on nutrients, cheaper on my back because I really didn't do much work. And one thing that I am going to change this time is I'm not going to do the trellis net so early. I found it really hard at the end to get it harvesting out of it, and it was caught in it, and because I'm not in a big pot, like it's not as easy as just take, like, you know, it was man, it was just, I got some stands printed. My brother printed them for me, so I'm gonna go with those and maybe put a trellis net like at the last little bit when it gets to where it's stretching. You know what I mean? So learn something, man. It was super fun to learn, and I'm glad we decided to do it because I might be growing like this for the foreseeable future, man.
Very cool. Yeah, that trellis net problem is pretty common, right? And I think Troy, the Northern Scrogger, has a great tip for that. Is he use masonry twine and kind of builds a scrog each time that he or trellis each time that he does it. Then he just snips the wires right down. But if you're reusing a trellis net, definitely an issue. I remember H with his, I think it was his GGC plant, harvested and hung dry with the trellis net right on there and just waited till it kind of shrunk a little bit to take that off. So definitely growing's not easy. Whatever, it's worth it.
Figure it out.
Not completely easy. So your next Bud Cups run, you're gonna introduce a male I saw on the post.
Yeah, that's why I'm stoked that you asked me to be here, because I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. I got some questions I could ask him. You know what I mean? Because I'm just gonna listen. I'm always trying to find that genetic that's going to help my back the most. And while I have a mother tent with 3 or 4 of them, I could always go a little bit better, right? And listen, seeds are not cheap. And you know, trying to hunt through everybody else's stuff, I'm like, I've got a couple, like I'm going to do a couple clones to put in there, and everything else is going to be from seed. And I'm going to use, I got a bunch of different stuff. I got some Fast Bud stuff. I got some stuff from Copycat. I got some stuff from Dead by Dawn. I got a bunch of different stuff, and I'm just going to do it. And then I don't want to, I have a few questions already, but we'll wait until he gets on here. But yeah, man, I'm super excited to try it myself. Why not? Just, I have enough, not enough. I have a fair bit of medicine now with that run and the last run, and this run I still have to harvest. My freezer's pretty full again, so I'm like, let's try something new. And maybe I can wash once I pull the seeds out, however I'm going to do that, I can wash whatever's remaining and see how it tastes, or even, you know, put it in a bag and squish it and make some rosin regardless. So
yeah, well, you're gonna have a bunch of different varieties to choose from after you do that. So with that comes a lot of testing, which I'm sure you're excited for as well, but that's quite a ways down the road. So yeah, without, you know, dragging this on too much longer, without bringing Scott on here, let's introduce Scott Gollum back to the show. Scott, welcome back.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back and really looking forward to today.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you back. Last time you were on, H, he was almost making me uncomfortable with how long he was dragging it out to talk about those seedless genetics that you were doing. So he's a man of suspense, and just kept like bringing it up and then said, well, before we get into that, So before we get into teaching everybody how to create their own genetics and make their own seeds at home, maybe let's just chat about the progress since we last had you on with some of the stuff you've been doing, and give us a brief intro for the people who haven't seen you before.
Okay, so my name's Scott Gollum. I am the research facilities manager at Niagara College. I oversee all of the cannabis and other horticultural research that we do there. I also teach part-time in the commercial cannabis production program at Niagara College. I do some kind of side stuff. I work with Remix Genetics. We work on kind of different seedless varieties, tetraploids, triploids, kind of other commercial varieties going that way. And just kind of do a whole lot of different things. Got my hand in a bunch of different pots, and I'm always looking for kind of the newest techniques, the newest ways of doing things, and what people are really out there doing at the moment.
So when you say hand in a few different pots, is that literal or is that?
Yeah. I got plants going everywhere, right?
Yeah. There you go. That's great. It looks like H is in the house, so he is unable to attend, but he's going to be in the guest spot here. So I'll look out for questions from him. But yeah, like what's the progress like been with your project since we last had you on?
So one of the really interesting things we're finding with the triploids right now is, I'd mentioned before, we're seeing that you have a different rate of seedlessness. So again, people are looking at the triploids mainly for seedless production. If you're looking at growing outdoors, pollination is really a big issue, especially as we get kind of more and more people growing outdoors. There's more people that didn't know they had a male plant till it's too late. And that pollen can travel anywhere between 2 to 10 kilometers, right? So when you look at a general rural kind of area, there's a lot of pollen traveling a lot of places, I think. And I've seen, even just walking by people's backyards, there's male plants every once in a while. But what we're finding with seedless varieties is that the amount of seedlessness varies depending on the phenotype that we're finding. So in some of our pollination trials that I discussed before, we'd basically put them in the middle and I would surround them by male plants. So these plants are getting just bombarded with pollen. Looks like they have powdery mildew. They're just coated in pollen. And that's why I'm testing the seedlessness. So some varieties I'm getting kind of 1 to 2 immature seeds that don't really develop and do nothing. I have other varieties that, you start to see somewhere in the 15 to 20 seeds, which still isn't a lot. If I were to do that with a normal plant, I'd be expecting hundreds to possibly thousands of seeds. But the other really cool thing that we're finding with our triploids right now is that for whatever reason, we aren't really sure why, but instead of saying having an 8-week flower time, we're finding some varieties that we're able to bring down at week 6 that are hitting like 25% THC. And we're speeding up. So something's going on in this genetics where we're cutting off about 2 weeks of flower time, which is absolutely crazy when we look at traditionally what people are doing. You're looking at 8 to 10 weeks, I'd say, on average of flower time for most cultivars nowadays. So we haven't really figured out what that mechanism is, but it is a really exciting kind of development to see coming about.
Yeah, you're dropping that down by 25%. And, you can, like Mike and I have learned, you don't need to veg for very long, but that flower period's typically, at least 8 weeks. So that's incredibly cool. So I would imagine because you're working on this, you work with commercial cultivators that do more of an outdoor run, or are you going to be using these genetics mainly indoor facilities as well?
So I think really the target market for this is more outdoor growers, especially kind of large scale people that are growing for extraction. And part of the reason for that is that you find that as you pollinate, it's not just that your cannabinoids go down, but your yields also go down whenever that happens. So the plant ends up putting energy into kind of producing seeds for offspring and kind of replenishing itself and keeping that next generation going, as opposed to just stacking up kind of massive buds like we're looking for and really like compounding that cannabinoid content. So outdoors is really kind of the big target market, I think, more so, but I think you will see it start to come more indoors going forward, just because of that time speed up that we're starting to see.
Very cool.
Well, and outdoors too. I know we're all in Ontario here. 2 weeks quicker in Ontario would be great. Like awesome for outdoor, right?
Yeah, if we can shave that and get out of that wet season that we always have kind of at the end of that summer there and early fall, then we can really get rid of that botrytis, bud rot, other kind of things that we really typically see a big issue with.
Man, that's amazing. I remember H grew this beautiful fruity pebbles, and it was still maturing when we got a frost, and it looked gorgeous, but unfortunately, didn't get the yield we were looking out of for that one. So wow, that's quite the breakthrough. And people on here, you're hearing it right from Scott first, that maybe we'll be looking at shorter flower times in the near future. That'd be very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mike, since you're going to be trying this experiment sooner than I, do you want to lead some questions here about how to make your own genetics?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the first thing for me is I'm in a very small area, so I only have a 5x5 tent. And that's why I like to be able to have small cups and smaller plants. But I've never seeded a plant before. So I guess the first question for me is like, if I have a 5x5 area and I have a plant that's, a foot tall and there's like 3 or 4 offshoots and a few, like how many seeds would if I pollinate that, how many seeds would I get, on a good day or a bad day, or like, that range of how many would be?
So it's kind of hard to say the range, because really what we're finding with pollination events really is that the timing is kind of critical. So we really want those pistils like kind of in that early stage of development to get maximum pollination. If you wait a little bit too long, they don't receive the pollen quite as well as what we're trying to find. So what I typically do when I'm putting plants, if I have a plant that I know is going to be male, I usually set that into flower about a week before I would any female plants. That way it's a bit ahead. So you do find that the pollen sacs, they do start developing, but they do take a bit longer to kind of open up. So by having that head start, I make sure that pollen starts really opening and really proliferating out of that plant around the time that those females are hitting that like exact prime spot, which seems to be somewhere, again, cultivar dependent, but I'd say somewhere between day 16 to 28, kind of, you have that kind of small snowball stage kind of starting on those buds. That's when they seem really receptive to taking pollen in. So in terms of kind of ballparking numbers, it really, it's hard to say. It really, you see kind of a seed efficiency, but I'd say somewhere in the range of probably on the low end, 10 to 20 seeds kind of thing. On the high end, I've had plants that in some of my kind of controlled breeding chambers that hit over 6,000 seeds a plant. So it's kind of a wide range that you typically see. And a lot really comes down to the vigor of the pollen, as well as other things. You'll see like high humidity is one thing that will work against your pollen. So you do want to kind of have a bit of a lower humidity if you're going to, because as soon as the pollen gets wet, it isn't as viable. So dropping that humidity down to, I'd say 50, 55%, you do get a bit better pollination rates.
Well, that's cool to know. Yeah.
I hope the chat has a notebook out. Of course, you can come back and rewatch this, but I'm taking notes myself because what a cool topic. One of the questions that I had this week was, does it make much of a difference which genetics, the male plant and the female plant? Like, are you going to get more traits from the male compared to the female plant, or vice versa?
So I think this is kind of a somewhat arguable point, depending on who you ask. But in my experience, I would say that for the most part, the offspring seems to lean more towards the female plant. So typically, I will keep the female plant as kind of, here's the base plant I want, and I'll use the male that has a characteristic of something that I'm trying to increase. So say I have a female plant that has really nice cannabinoids, but the buds are a little bit smaller than I would kind of want. I'll bring in kind of a male plant that has larger buds to try and bulk that trait in the other plant.
Very cool. Now, are there specific traits that, transfer better, say terps, bud size, stuff like that? Like, what would you be looking for from your male plant other than, say, the bud size?
It really kind of depends on the characteristics that you're looking for, right? So again, it's a tough one. We look at commercially, what I'm looking for is a plant that can kind of stand up on its own, ideally as minimal trellising as possible. You want to, in a commercial instance, I would say you want to basically grow small plants fast. I found commercially what worked best is a 1 week veg time, 8 weeks flowers. If I'm selecting for phenotypes, that's what I'm looking for, something that fits that really quick turn window. So I want a plant that grows really nice, something that kind of tops, has a nice kind of 4 to 6 branch structure so that I can get a really high density, really fast kind of turn with that crop and maximize the yield. But you do see that kind of, again, when we look at terpenes and things like that, those seem to kind of lean a little bit more towards the female side, whatever that female plant was. So I find what the male really starts bringing in, unless you start going a bit deeper, is just kind of your bud size. You can help stack the cannabinoids as well, and really just trying to adjust that structure of the plant overall.
Very cool. Mike?
Well, okay, so yeah, no, that's yeah, no, I'm definitely going to be rewatching this episode. I was going to take notes, but then I was like, you know what, I'm going to rewatch it. It's great that it's here forever now. So yeah, no, so okay, so I guess as a newbie, because I haven't even, like, I'm starting very soon. I've got my genetics picked out, but anything that would be super like I that to start the male 2 weeks earlier. That's I just assumed, because I'm a nobody, I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, if they both in the real world, they would all be starting at around the same time, right? So that wouldn't be a thing. So in the indoor breeding, what else would be something that you would think and you go, ooh, this is a tricky one. No one would like really think about this, like
yeah. So
pro tips.
Yeah, so I guess it depends what you're looking for. If you're going for regular seeds and you're starting to pack, you don't know what they are. Typically what you find are, unless you can have gender testing at home, and they do sell kind of different kits for that, that work kind of hit or miss depending on what it is. Typically you want to go more towards a PCR, polymerase chain reaction kind of way, but there are some colorimetric ones where you mix a leaf and it'll change the color. Those work well as well. But you typically find that male plants tend to grow a little bit faster, a little more taller and more vigorously than females. And I think a lot of that really comes from the natural ability that ideally if pollen's going to go drop down on flowers, they need to be a bit taller in order for that pollen to drop more effectively. So if you're growing regular seeds, that's an early way, not necessarily guaranteed, but you do typically see that the males will grow a bit faster if you don't have any other way of kind of identifying the gender prior to flowering those plants. If you're going to go for feminized seeds, what this is we're taking a female plant and we're basically going to spray the plant with something. So what a lot of people use commercially is something called silver thiosulfate. So it's a mix of sodium thiosulfate and silver nitrate. You can get them on Amazon as individual things, but the silver nitrate's a little bit more of a tricky one to track down, but I know I have found it on Amazon now lately. Other people use something like colloidal silver. So really what this is doing is it's going to block the ethylene pathways in the plant. So instead of the female plant throwing out kind of during flower, the pistils and kind of that bud formation, it's going to force that plant to throw out male pollen sacs instead. So this way we can basically use that as our kind of male pollen donor. And from there, it only has female chromosomes. So when I cross that to a normal plant, I'm only going to get female seeds that come out of this. So when we're looking at doing the conversion process, typically what you want to do is I get like a little 1 liter sprayer and I will just spray the plant till runoff that I want to be the male plant. And again, I'm typically going to spray this plant about 5 days before I even initiate flower. I want to make sure that those pathways are being blocked as effectively as possible. So after 5 days, I'll put that male plant into flower and I'm going to spray that plant essentially every 5 days from the first day I sprayed it for, I'd say, 3 to 4 times. And you'll usually get a very strong conversion of that plant. So again, when we're talking about flowering, I'm going to put this male into flower 1 week prior to any female plants that I want going into that same kind of flowering area. And this just allows it to basically have that full conversion, make those pollen sacs open and be viable dropping pollen and be great.
So just to clarify then, you'll take a feminized seed, put it through this process, and it will come out completely male rather than a herm?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it a lot depends on the coverage. So the cool thing about this is that if you wanted to spray a plant and say you want to self the plant or have it pollinate itself. So what you could do is spray literally just that top cola that's going to be forming, that top kind of meristem, and leave the rest of the plant. I've done it in ways where I've put you don't have to be fancy with any of this stuff, right? I've taken a piece of like Bristol board or a bag and just put it around so the bottom part isn't getting covered, spray that top cola. That part will produce male pollen flower or pollen sacs, and then it'll start dropping pollen on the bud sites that form below because the bottom part of the plant won't convert. It's only whatever you're spraying that kind of has that conversion. So you find getting a very thorough spray on that plant is going to be the best bet for you to get that conversion.
So could I do like one of the secondary branches? Let's say I still want to flower what I want the male, side to be, and then collect that pollen later on? Or would you suggest, it's more effective to have the male in the tent with the female plants? So
it really depends what you want to do. I've done a lot of like really crazy stuff and I play around with different kind of methods all the time, but I've had some plants where I would take kind of a bottom secondary bud site. I'll spray that with a silver thiosulfate or an STS, and basically take that branch as it starts pollinating, and I'll move it beside the plant next to it that has a lower secondary and just put a bag over it. You can use a paper bag, like a lunch bag, nothing too fancy, just a paper bag with a zip tie on each side. And that pollen will then pollinate those 2 branches only. And the rest of your tent, you can still flower, you can still collect that and not worry about seed most of the time.
That's amazing.
Cool. The big thing I want to point out is that whenever you do have male plants, especially when you put it in, say, a bag type thing, is that as the male plants go, the pollen sacs open, they start dropping pollen. And after that, the pollen sac starts rotting on the plant because it's kind of had its end of life. So you want to make sure you're clearing off those kind of buds, those pollen sacs over time. You can basically shake the plant. You can rub the plant kind of down gently with your hands. All the sacs that haven't opened yet will still be viable and they're not going to fall off the plant. So you can be pretty aggressive with these things. But if you leave those plants on, you start getting kind of molds and they start rotting on the plant. And then it just kind of increases your susceptibility of getting other molds and pathogens in your other kind of flowers going forward, especially if you're looking at kind of smoking that going forward as opposed to just extracting seeds.
Cool. Now I got a question, because this I've been Googling in the past, and I know feminized seeds is cool and all, and I'm not starting with feminized seeds. That's maybe the run after, right? Like that's where I see the progression going, right? But I do have something that when I came across the feminized seeds. So if you're going to be using either one of those 2 sprays, I guess the first question We'll get to that. You can answer it at the end because I have the secondary question was more important. But which one do you suggest, the silver versus the STS? And then if you're going to do this to a plant, does the plant that you're going to be spraying, can you do that to a feminized from seed? It was a feminized plant already, or would you be better off to do a regular seed that ended up being female and spray that one?
So it doesn't seem to matter. Anything that's female, because we're blocking those hormonal pathways in the plant. So that's really, we're just manipulating the hormones in the plant to make it do what we want. So as long as it's female, it'll have that conversion over there. You do find, again, if you have a plant that has a tendency to hermaphrodite a bit more, you probably don't want to select that as kind of your male plant or anything like that, because you're just going to pass on those traits to that next generation. So that's the only thing I'd be kind of a little bit worried about. But as we talk about kind of hermaphroditing plants, especially when we look at kind of breeding programs and things like that, one thing that I've seen a lot come up commercially is if you're running a really fast breeding program and you're going through high throughput of seeds, if you flower the seed plant very young, you will sometimes find that you get a couple male pollen sacs will form kind of on the very lowest branches that you have, just in that kind of crotch where it touches the main stem. And you see that this doesn't seem to really progress up through the rest of the plant. I think it's just a bit of an immaturity thing in the plant, that it's not quite ready to be pushed as fast as we're trying to push things sometimes. So I know some people freak out like, oh, you see the one sign of a pollen sac is hermaphrodite, we're going to kill this plant. But you do see that it will grow out of that a lot of the time. And it is just kind of a maturity thing, I think.
Awesome. Mike needed a quick break off screen, so I'm doing that for now. Guys in the chat, while we have Scott here, please do fire off some questions. We had a question back when you were talking about spraying down the plant that 5 days before flipping to flower. They asked if they could do that 2 weeks in early flower, still in that stretch phase, or if that's a bit too late at that point.
You can do it. The biggest thing is that you start getting you'll get less conversion overall, because a lot of those pistils that are already formed are going to stay as that kind of pistil. They're not going to revert back from there. So what you will see is, especially if you're kind of looking at self in a plant or self-pollinating a plant, it works really well for that, because any pollen that drops is now going to pollinate that exact plant as well.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Let me see if there's any more questions in
so
here.
I would like we missed the first part. We missed the first part of my question, and I bought this is what I wanted to go grab, right? So I bought some of this, and I guess just the first question that I asked was, what's better, STS or silver, right? So I, in my very limited stuff, got some of this stuff, which is super high ppm. And if you were going to do this, would you use something like this, or would you go with something lower ppm, or it doesn't matter because you're going to dilute it anyways, or like anything about this? I would be interested to hear.
Yeah, so I haven't played around with colloidal silver a whole lot, because if we're talking about what I think is best, the STS is, in my opinion, kind of the better one. I get a lot higher conversion rates because I can make it the way I want, so I can increase that strength if I need to. The colloidal silver, again, the higher strength I think you can get, the better is probably going to be what it is, because the more silver you have, the more it's going to block those ethylene pathways. So you don't want to dilute it too much, I wouldn't say. But yeah, they both work, and the colloidal silver is obviously a lot easier for the average person to get their hands on. Again, the silver nitrate is the one part of that equation that's harder to come by, and only recently have I seen people start selling it on Amazon. Otherwise, you used to have to go to like the scientific lab companies, and it gets a little bit more out of reach for the average person.
Okay. And there's not, like, just for warning, like, there's nothing like illegal in Ontario about this, or like it's like
okay. Nothing illegal about it. It's just especially if you're going to work with the sodium or the silver thiosulfate, the STS, you just want to be careful, right? It is a chemical. You'll see a bunch of warning labels on the package. You want to wear gloves and a respirator when you're doing that. Whereas something like colloidal silver, you don't need to worry so much about that. People are already ingesting that and things. So from a strictly safety perspective, the colloidal silver would be the safer option at home.
Yeah, the reason it's not easily available, Mike, is because we're so far down the rabbit hole at this point when you're making your own genetics.
Yeah. And again, I wouldn't, like, it's just great information. That's kind of cool. And I didn't know that about the STS. So I would have found it, I would assume, if I started Googling it, starting to dive down that. And that's why, like I said, I'm not there yet. I like and that's where listen, man, like a lot of people, and again, if you've done a lot of testing, you probably have seen this, or like there's always this bro science or whatever you want to call it, that regular seed females are bigger, stronger, faster, everything's better about that. Like, is there any truth that you've seen to that as your vast knowledge as a breeder, I guess, breeding technologies?
Again, I think a lot of that comes down to kind of the subjectiveness of how people have traditionally done things. You'll see a lot of people in the camp that, if you used strictly male plants that are naturally male, you're going to have more vigor, things like that. When I'm looking at it kind of on a commercial scale or growing something at home, if I'm limited to a plant count at home, I don't really want to waste my time growing males. You know what I mean? So if I made a seed run with regular seeds, that's great. But now I have a 50-50 chance of anything I'm growing in that tent, I could be cutting out and killing. Unless you have multiple tents and you're like, hey, I'm going to take this male and throw it in the next one to make more seed, So in that perspective, I prefer kind of the female seeds, the feminized ones, just for knowing that it's a female and I'm going to have a product that I can use at the end.
Yeah.
Gotcha. We had a question. Sorry, go ahead, Mike. No, you go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. It wasn't really a question. Just somebody said don't smoke the plants that you spray. So let's say you did one of those secondary branches and you wanted to keep the flower for consumption on the rest of the plant. Is there any health effects we should be worried about if we're doing it that way?
Yeah. Any part of the plant that you're spraying, don't consume that. So again, if we're looking at kind of, if you're trying to keep the flower, use a very low secondary branch, something that's basically lowest to the pot, because anything you spray is going to go down with gravity, right? So you don't want to spray a top branch if you plan on smoking the rest of the plant. Again, colloidal silver, probably not as big of a deal, but again, if we're spraying a lot of things, you probably don't want to be smoking colloidal silver either, right? So I would say avoid smoking the plant in any parts that you're spraying. And if you are going to spray kind of a lower branch, just make a barrier out of something, whether it's like a binder or a book or something like that, you know what I mean? Just above that branch, just to try and minimize any spray going up onto parts that you want to keep.
Very cool.
So I guess my next question that I was going to ask was, if I've got a male plant and I go, okay, it's a male plant and it starts, and like you said, those pollen sacs start, coming off and there is pollen being released. Can I take that and re-veg it after that's happened? Or is it at that point, because of it's happened, no, I should have taken clones before that? I guess that's where it's like, do I take the clones and take up space in my cloner? And I have a very high plant count. I have a 20 gram a day prescription in Ontario, which allows me 98 plants indoor, which is ridiculous. But when I told my doctor, hey, I'm hunting and I need to find something, he's like, yeah, no problem. So he gave me that. I guess it's for somebody who's got a lower plant count, maybe instead of taking clones, re-vegging. Is it possible or not?
It is possible. Re-vegging is kind of a weird one, right? If anytime you do re-veg, I find it works best if you go directly under 24-hour light instead of kind of an 18/6 veg kind of light. And I think it's just really helps kind of force that plant backwards. Again, you do find that you get to a point where if you go kind of really late kind of flower, it's a lot harder to re-veg those. And sometimes you got to cut back the plant and just try and keep any of those lower, most immature branches to try and have that re-veg. But one thing that I found works really effectively is if you're growing your plants out and you want to do a quick sex test or something on them, you can take cuttings while the plant's still fairly small, right? And as those plants are rooting out, just put those into flower right away. You're not actually waiting from the root out per se, but you'll be able to see which ones are converting over to female and which ones are male before you kind of put the rest of your tent into flower.
I've done that before, and I found somebody on the internet that told me to do it. I took cuttings, put them into the shot glass just with water, and switched the time. And man, you knew it was great in that aspect, right? So I was just more trying to say, like, maybe I can keep, because again, the cuttings sometimes, cuttings don't all like. Sometimes you screw up and you kill your clone. I've done it before. I'm not a perfect cloner, and again, it was just one of those things where I was like, if I get the pollen, I like it, and I go, oh crap, I want to redo it. And that's a good point about the lower ones. That I never thought of it like that, but that makes total sense, right? They're not as developed, so to go backwards. Yeah, that's awesome.
Another option is you can collect the pollen. It is a little bit more tricky. I've seen people where you basically shake it over a window screen. You basically sift it like you would kind of a dry sift hash kind of style to get that plant matter out. The big thing really is you just want to make sure that you let that pollen kind of dry out. So if you are going to store it in kind of a container, put some rice or something in there just to absorb that extra moisture. Because again, moisture is going to be the biggest thing that kills your pollen. But if you shake it over a screen, you can collect that pollen, keep it in a little jar. I like to keep it in the fridge. Some people freeze it. I find that the fridge works better for me. And I have pollen that I can use even up to a year later if I wanted to. So that's another way. Yeah.
If you're lucky like me to have a freeze dryer, would the freeze dryer come into saving pollen at all?
I'm not sure. I've never tried freeze drying the pollen before. Something to check out. Yeah, we should do a test sometime.
I'm gonna freeze some. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, Mike needs to get his hours in on the freeze dryer for sure. This is a good time to introduce the keyword for our giveaway later on today, so we can start collecting some potential winners throughout. So we're going to be giving away our Big Bud Bundle, your choice of pot size, guys. And because we've got Scott on, I want to do a little bit of a different way of collecting these entries here. So the hashtag is going to be hashtag genetics, but I also want you guys to give me what you would call your own genetics if you went ahead and took the advice from today's show. So whatever you would call your own strain, and then hashtag genetics will get you into the draw. We'll do it a little bit later on. I still have my update video on my Bud Cup run to play, but we'll start collecting some of those now and run that a bit later. But yeah, this has been a super cool episode. Last month we had Lori on. So I know you obviously know Lori quite well. And the main reason that we got both of you on is because of H's connection to Niagara College. So is there anything you want to share that's going on at Niagara College before we let you enjoy your Friday here?
Yeah, so we just built a brand new research greenhouse at Niagara College. So it is a large research only greenhouse. So that's super exciting. There aren't a whole lot of those kind of around really. So it has 5 individual bays. They all have individual temperature, pH, CO2, humidity control, everything like that. So I'm really looking forward to this. We have one's going to be licensed specifically for cannabis. So it's going to give me about 130 square meters of greenhouse space for just cannabis research. So I'm really looking forward to what we can kind of do with this going forward. So if anybody's out there and they're looking at kind of a new product or anything else they want to kind of bring to market, reach out to me and I'd love to see what we can do and how we can help grow that.
Do a Bud Cups greenhouse run, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
Well, I know H hearing that you guys just built that, he's going to want to do another road trip. But luckily, we're not too far from you guys.
Yeah,
so
I have to bring you guys through for a tour.
Yeah, we would love that because we've been through the bunker. Mike hasn't. Maybe you can make the trip from Ottawa, Mike, a little bit farther of a drive for you.
I'm in. As long as it's not snowing, okay?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great update because we're definitely going to want to come by. It's fully finished or still?
We're in the final stages of completion right now, so probably mid-March we'll have it fully up and running.
That's really cool. Guys in the chat, don't get too excited. Unfortunately, anything they produce in those greenhouses gets destroyed in a devastating way. We'll have to, lobby the politicians to maybe make some rule changes around that because it is a shame when you've got people. I mean, you're a master grower, right? So there's definitely the quality of what's being destroyed is probably better than what most of us will ever grow in our lives. So, Mike, any last questions before we?
For sure. There's one last one. I didn't know it was going to be over this quick.
Hey, Scott, if you want to hang out,
I'm cool to hang out and answer whatever questions people have.
Okay, perfect. I'm not trying to rush you off here, but go ahead.
This one's kind of an Ontario, or maybe it's Canada, because you said, there's some things available for testing. Are you talking like producer-wise for testing? Or are you talking about somebody like me? Like I reached out to one, I don't know where it was, and I wanted to get my flower tested just to see what was in there, if there's any like molds or like anything. I just wanted to do it, and the amount of money they wanted to charge me was astronomical. So I guess when you're talking about genetic testing where you say, is this male or female, I like that the sounds of the thing you said where you crush it up and you stir it and it changes color. Is that something that's available in Canada, or is that something that's available to like home growers in Canada, or like what are the options there? Because I was hard to find it.
Yeah, so the one company that sells it, they're not cheap. So I think for the home grower, your best bet's probably take a cutting and stick it in the side room and flower it. to be honest. But the one company that sells it, it's called Mini PCR. They sell a small kind of polymerase chain reaction kind of setup, and they sell this one kit for genetic testing for male female plants. And you basically you crush up your leaf in this kind of buffer solution that it gives you. You put it in this little mini PCR machine. It runs a heat temperature cycle for about an hour, and then you'll see whether the vial goes yellow or pink to identify whether it's male or female. So it's still, I wouldn't say it's super expensive, but I think it's still kind of you're investing a little deeper if you want to go that route overall.
I envisioned it being something you just get and you just shake it up and go, oh, there it is. But no, yeah, okay, yeah, and you're right. The shot glass with water and into a 12-12, man, it did its job. I knew exactly what it was, and it didn't take an overly long time. So again, it's
I think there's a lot of people that really try and overcomplicate things, and really keep it simple is how I try and operate everything, right? If there's a ghetto way of doing it, I'm going to find that ghetto way of doing it, because then anybody can do this, right?
Yeah. Now, I guess the question I had now, because I really like that 2-week shorter, 25% shorter flower time. If this is stuff you guys are experimenting in the college, and is this going to be coming to a Canadian market or an American market near you, or like how does that work?
So it's kind of a weird one. We're in the process right now of working with the University of Guelph, where we've been doing a lot of development with Remix, and we're going to be releasing some cannabis cultivars to the market coming up through their plant breeding rights section. So this will be kind of, as far as I'm aware, it's super exciting because it'll be the first kind of, I guess, academically driven plant breeders rights cannabis release globally that I know of. So what we're going to be doing is releasing a couple triploid plants, so the seedless varieties. But the big game changer is we plan on releasing a couple tetraploid ones. So these are the ones that if you cross this with a normal plant, you get a seedless variety coming out. So again, coming from kind of the cannabis space of everybody shares knowledge, and I want everyone to kind of be successful, right? So a lot of people in the seedless game right now are trying to basically, we're the only ones who produce seedless plants. Whereas we were like, why can't we just let everybody create their own seedless plants? Like, let's give the breeding stock out there as we have it and see where people take it globally. So again, this release will probably go mainly just to the actual licensed producers to start with. But there are a couple of people, I know we were talks with some people out in New Brunswick looking to sell basically clones to the public. So I'm waiting for that to really happen in Ontario. It hasn't really spiked like I thought it would. But once those nursery programs open in Ontario, that's where I think the public access will really start to get to this.
I know a lot of growers love finding a bag seed. It's okay, Mike. I'll let you take this away.
Listen,
I know a lot of growers like seeing the bag seeds in their commercial stuff and then trying to grow that. But I guess you're going to be eliminating that altogether with your plan.
Potentially.
Well, it's like you were saying earlier, it's the outdoor stuff, man. Like I'm like, buddy of mine says, oh, my buddy down the road, I want to come see his plants, man. I don't want him to screw up my plants. Like, can I come over and see what he's doing? Just because I'm like, male, no. But you know what's funny is you talk about tetraploid, and I actually have somebody gifted me some tetraploid seeds from Humboldt that I kind of just threw in it's in the thing. But I did some Googling, and this is a great question that I wasn't even going to think about asking, but can I just get some gout medicine and crumble it up and put it in some water and spray some plants that I'm about to do here and get some tetraploid ones too? Or is it that easy, or is it not that easy?
So yeah, so it would be that easy, right? Again, you could use the same breeding technique. It doesn't really matter what the ploidy level is or how many chromosomes it has. It works on the tetraploids, the diploid kind of thing. So yeah, if you want to make tetraploid seeds, if you have seeds around, yeah, grow those up, spray some, and you could kind of start making your own tetraploid crosses.
No, sorry. Let me back up here.
Yep.
I want to make a tetraploid spray.
Okay, so no.
With the gout medicine, because isn't that what it is? My dad's got gout, and he's talking about it one time, and I go, isn't that the same thing that you'd use to make tetraploids, or is it not?
Yeah, so if anybody's into kind of reading scientific papers, I know Max Jones's lab at the University of Guelph just published one recently on kind of using oryzalin as a chemical for creating tetraploids. and they kind of went through and tried to optimize what those concentrations would be. The big thing that we found with tetraploids in general is if you convert a plant over to a tetraploid state, because you're only doing kind of the meristem or the growth tip of that plant that's kind of converting to that new genetics, is that if you hold that plant as a mother plant, it has a weird tendency, since it's not a natural state, that the plant tries to revert itself back to kind of that natural diploid state. It doesn't like to stay in there. So it's kind of one of those weird games where you typically need a bit more kind of scientific equipment as well to test whether or not it is tetraploid or diploid. So you use flow cytometry for that, which again, universities are pretty much the only places I know that have these, or big labs. So it's not quite as simple as doing it at home, just because there's a lot of equipment that's harder to access.
Okay. And I ran some triploids by Humboldt, and I had them all herm out, every single one of them. And I had taken a bunch of clones because my plan was to put them outside, right? So to prevent that sort of pollination or something. And the clones that I took, I put them out and I had them in like solo cups, right? They're bud cups, whatever I had, just to start them in, in the little plugs. And then when I put them outside, and I usually wait till June because of the frost in May, always possible. I put them out in June, and I took it from that cup when it was probably about this big, and I put it into a 25-gallon pot, and it didn't even do anything. It started looking weird and like it was re-vegging, and I never really got to the bottom of why I did that. I was under the impression that if I took a clone of a triploid, I should have been able to do it, but maybe it was this genetics that had some tendencies to herm, and I don't, anything you got to say on that would be kind of cool to know. I didn't know.
Could be part of the genetics. I know we are seeing kind of an increased hermaphroditing rate in triploid varieties in general, especially when we do kind of larger scale pheno hunts with our triploid seeds. You do see a tendency to come up with those, which is why we've really kind of tried with Remix to select plants that don't have that hermaphroditing trait to really kind of carry that on if we're going to release kind of selected cultivars to the market. Because it's still an issue, and no one's really kind of come to the conclusion as to why, aside from really, in my mind, it's not really a natural state for the plant, right? We're kind of forcing it to work in this way that it works, but it's not quite how it naturally is derived. So I think it's the plant's fighting itself a little bit there.
Okay, so more breeding, more testing, more whatever, and then probably could get a better, yeah.
Yeah, I think as we go down the line, we really start stabilizing these traits and really starting to find which plants kind of convert better, which ones kind of produce less hermaphroditing traits going forward. We'll really start to dial in, and I think especially outdoor triploids are probably the future going forward. But I still think realistically, we're probably about 3+ years out for commercial kind of mass adoption, at least.
Okay, and my last question. I'll cut it out of here because
you're good, man. Keep it going.
Well,
this is great. Look, the feedback in the comment section is we need to replace H and Kurt with Scott and Mike. That's literally what I thought. So I'm totally cool with that, man. I'll just manage the back end. It's perfect.
So you're seeing that at the triploid level, right? Does that come from the only thing I'm worried about is the tetraploid seeds that I do have created, and some of them, or that line or that genetic created the triploid that I had that every single seed hermed. Do I run that risk of the tetraploid as being the thing to cross with or use? Like, is it there, or is it no? Once you get here, if I take the tetraploid and make a bunch of triploid seeds, they're all going to be that, or no, you hunt through those, you're going to find them at a decent rate anyways.
Yeah, again, it's really hard to say kind of where that trait's coming from, because even when we look at the tetraploid state, it's not a natural state for the plant either, right? So we're kind of working with multiple unnatural states. We're trying to hope that nothing goes wrong in between, right? So I think I think it's just going to be going forward and just really trying to select plants that seem to not produce this trait of hermaphrodism going forward. And again, I don't know how much of it is a maturity thing. Like I said, you see hermaphrodism in certain plants if you push a seed too quickly. And again, a lot of people, I don't know, I'm not sure how long people have been growing these out, but it is one of those things that you do see. It just comes up and we're not really sure why.
And you know what? That was one of the things they had talked about, that if you would have vegged that plant a little bit longer, like you would outside, you probably wouldn't have seen that hermaphrodite as much, right? And that you're
Mhm.
sort of saying the same thing, right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So again, if your seed's kind of in an immature state when it tries to flower, it will throw out a couple pollen sacs every once in a while, depending on the genetic. So if you ever do see that happening, especially on the lower branches, all I do is just pinch it off with my hand and just pull it off when I see it. And then usually the rest of the plant grows out of it. You don't see it again. So yeah.
Well, and that's what I ran into, and that's what I was doing. I took them all off. I'm like, oh no, but there was always one hiding in behind a bud that I would find, a week down the road. And then what I did is not as so much as your surrounded one with it. I took that one off and I went over because I reached in to grab a leaf and I hit it and I could. I'm like, oh no, it's there, right? So, but anytime I found one, I would go over and I had this was. To me, the triploids was a thing I could do while doing a breeding project and still get some decent bud and still, work with the flower and not have to worry about it. So I would take it and I put it over on a diploid. I put it over there on the same bud every single time. And it didn't do anything to that one. And none of I didn't find any seeds because I wash all my stuff. I didn't find any seeds in the triploids either. So I'm like, oh, that is a cool thing, right? Like it is not to hide it from people like Kurt was talking. I get that part too, but listen, there's a lot, in my opinion, as a home grower, I see some stuff that people are putting out, whether that's in the, the government Ontario cannabis store. I'm like, you guys going to sell seeds of that? And they're like, no, like they don't they're hoarding those too. Right. So whether it's a bag seed, you're going to try to get like it's genetics, man. It's like, it seems like everyone's hoarding it. And again, I guess it's the way they make money, I guess. Right. So.
Yeah, and that's the problem with kind of the game right now, right? Is that we've kind of lost the share approach. I know if you go to some of the conferences, I know, say like Grow Up conference has started in the last couple of years doing like a seed exchange. So I find that really cool, right? People come with their best genetics. Let's exchange some seeds and like, let's talk. And you know what I mean? It's a really good thing. And we always participate in that just to, spread the word and spread the love, really.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be. That 6-week flower stuff is going to be in high demand for sure. So I wouldn't blame you guys for at least milking it a little bit and then releasing it, right? You got to make sure there's costs involved too, I'm sure. Yeah. The school supports you guys quite a bit too, but that's why there's so much research and investment going into it. So there's obviously some sort of return out there, and on top of just how cool it is and how, if you told me every genetic I could grow flower in 6 weeks, I would be a very happy man. So it's cool because I've never heard of anything like that before. So.
Well, and you know what? I always tell, anytime I talk to, like, I've been at a couple shows where I'm like talking to the producer. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to buy your flower anyways, man. I'm growing all of mine from home. I'm not, the only time I ever get something from the cannabis store is if I'm out and I forgot something at home and I need some medicine. And that's, other than that, I'm not a customer of yours. Why not give me some of the seeds? Well, it's not only you, it's the, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of legal framework around it all still.
Yeah. Maybe they're just not confident in how good they are at growing their own genetics. There you go. If they were the best at growing it, they wouldn't mind if a home grower was getting in on the game. We had a unrelated question. How do you land a job at Niagara College? So cool. So I'm sure you had quite a bit of experience, but maybe tell us your story there.
Yeah. So currently, well, for me, I took the commercial cannabis production program at Niagara College, originally in the first kind of cohort that came out. From there, kind of went into the industry doing research and development with different companies, setting up breeding programs for some of the large kind of companies that you see out there, like Redican, Hexo, Tilray, things like that. And then I got asked to come back and start teaching part-time at Niagara College. And from there, kind of spawned into the research side, opened up, and I got into the research there. So if you're looking at how you could work with the college right now, if you came through as a student at the college, I do hire students for doing research with me. You just have to be either a current student or someone that's graduated in the last year at Niagara College. But always open to taking students. I love just teaching people, right? Here's what I know. I just want to share that with the world and let's go. I want the industry to be better. That's really what I'm aiming for as a whole, is that there's a lot of bad practices out there still. And there's a reason that commercial cannabis doesn't compete with what you see in kind of the gray market right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Market.
Yeah.
Well, and you can take what you learn at the college and do whatever you want with it. You don't have to go into the commercial world. H started a business with it. You know, you've done a ton of cool things with it. So you're only going to you know, improve your knowledge and go down the rabbit hole even further. So H speaks very highly of the program. I haven't met anybody who's got bad things to say about it. I've had the privilege of being in the bunker a few times, and it's cool, man. You're not gonna, I mean, unless you've got deep pockets, you're not going to be able to build a setup like that at home. So it's cool to see how the other side does things, for sure.
Definitely.
How long is the program there? Like, if somebody's interested in taking it, like, what is it? Is there like a 1, 2, 3 year or something? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so the program it's a postgraduate certificate. So you need to have a college diploma or university kind of degree to get in to start.
Okay.
But after that, it's only 8 months. So it's a pretty quick one. You know what I mean? When we talk about education, it's like kind of a pretty quick turnaround, and you learn a ton of cool stuff.
The fact that you need some other college or university, man, that's they ever, has anybody ever said that's a bad idea and they want to change that, or what?
Yeah, it's one of those things that is kind of, this is how the program was designed originally. You know what I mean? Again, we were the first program that was kind of offering cannabis in education in Canada. So it's kind of just how do you reevaluate those frameworks going forward, right?
Yeah. Because listen, man, I get that okay, if you're taking a math class and whatever, but if you're going there to talk cannabis, and listen, there's probably people that didn't go to any sort of college or university that would be levels above the people that did, that would start it. So that's where I go, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Too bad.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be a real estate agent, you just need a high school diploma there. So you can follow my footsteps on that stuff. Why don't we run this giveaway, and we can keep chatting for another, I mean, however long you guys want. The people on Instagram right now, StreamYard's going to boot us off after an hour. So if you want to continue hanging out with us for a little bit, come over to YouTube, X, or Facebook, and let's bring up this draw here. Let's see how many people we got in here. How do I do this again? Boom, add to stage. So we have 43 people in for the big bud bundle. You're going to get 4 pots, your choice of size, bud cups, bud huggers, bud clips. Scott, have you had a chance to try any of our stuff?
No, I haven't tried any of them yet, actually.
Are you growing at home still, in addition to all your other projects?
Yep, I got a bunch of phenotyping and breeding going on all the time.
All right. Well, I think H is still in the chat, and I'm surprised he hasn't sent you some of our gear, but we'll definitely do that as well. So 46 people in there right now. Put in hashtag genetics if you want to be cool like the rest of the people who got in earlier. Also, give us the name of your genetics that you would be calling whatever you want to cook up with Scott's knowledge here. If you're joining late, guys, I would say out of all the episodes we've done, no offense to any of our other guests, this is the show I would be rewatching. I'll be rewatching it if I ever decide to do what Mike's gonna do. And we just hit 50. So let's run this draw. 51 people in there now. Congrats to the future winner. H in there wants to win his own products, wants to win his own gear so he can send it to Scott. Oh, there you go. This I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce the name, Roy Hannah, but they were shocked that this was live because the captions, I guess, on Facebook work in real time. So here's the proof that this is a live show right here. Congrats on winning. All you're going to have to do is email hello@budtrainer.com with a screenshot showing you're the owner of the account, and we will ship that out to you as long as you're in the US or Canada. If you're outside of North America, other than Mexico, of course, we'll send you a gift card for outside of the US and Canada. But yeah, Mike, what do you got there? Is that the one that you dried?
Yeah, it's hanging up in there. That's and that's about the size of the plant. I would assume it's going to be smaller or bigger, like close to that. Like that's the like, again, it's hard to get 24 of those in the area, right? But I did, and it definitely worked out.
Beautiful.
That was my canopy.
Oh, nice.
So listen, I'm doing it again.
Yep.
Oh man, I don't know if I don't even want to show my video at this point. We're already at the hour, so I'm gonna save that for the next episode because that'll be great. We're right at 60 minutes here. Scott, thank you so much for
Thanks.
staying with us this long,
Yeah.
man. This was super
Thank you.
cool.
It was great.
Obviously, the feedback's been good. Where can people follow you? Maybe DM you on Instagram if you got an account. Is there any?
So
Are you open to taking questions?
Yeah, no, I'm always open to taking any questions. So not a super active Instagram user, but send me a message or whatever. And it's literally just my handle is Scott Gollum. So easy to find.
Perfect. All right, guys, give Scott a follow. I took some notes, but I'm glad we've got this recorded now on YouTube forever. So yeah, Mike, you got anything else to?
Which one is you, man? Which it's that one, that one, that one. None of these ones
Should be the top one.
should
No
like
picture,
no picture.
no profile picture.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a picture. I got to figure that out.
Yeah, we'll get you set up. I can help you with that side of things, and you can help
That's
me
you?
with creating our own genetics.
Nope, that was not me.
No. Okay.
No.
Well, let's figure this out before we go,
We'll figure
because
that out.
I feel like a lot of people will
100%. I want to follow you for sure.
Yeah, we'll want to do that. And guys, so the next episode will be the end of March. We'll do our best to invite a guest. It's going to kind of be like following Michael Jackson on a concert or something at this point, as far as following a strong performance here by Scott. But good luck to our next guest. That will be the last Friday of March, and we'll be probably talking about getting ready for outdoor grows. Right?
Sorry, it's Scott.Gollum. That's why I got it.
There you go. The dot is very important there. So you can follow Scott on Instagram. I'm going to put it up on a banner here right
Should
now.
see my picture on there.
Yeah, now I see it.
Yeah. Just the one L, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So there's the handle for Instagram. Scott, again, thank you so much. Mike, any last words or
Listen, I'm not going to allow Kurt and H to not bring me the next time they go. So I will see you someday, sir. And it was a pleasure to have this conversation. And I did see some of the comments. I listen. This is my dummy questions, but again, it was great answers. So I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, man.
Perfect. Thank
Cool.
you so much.
All right. See you, everybody. Have a great weekend.